Exploring some Talisman Tactica. Let's talk about the Toad. And I want to approach this subject carefully because there's a lot of things that I think board gamers look at Talisman and it has the potential to cause them to rage. And these are kind of Euro players that want to control everything, and I want to get rid of all dice, and I just want it to be cards, and I want to plot out like all my moves ahead. Talisman is random. There's a lot of crazy stuff happening. I mean, its DNA, its genesis is a Games Workshop-based game. If you know anything about the game, like you roll a 1, it's bad. You roll a 6, it's pretty good. 2, 3, and 4, well, might be good, might be bad, but it's not catastrophic of rolling a 1. And one of the features of the game, core game and built on the expansion, is the Toad. Magic turns you into a Toad. Well, when that happens, first of all, your stats revert to a Toad card for a number of turns. All your gear drops, and you can only move one space. So a couple of things happen at that point, depending on where you are and what's going on. So if you're on the main board and you've got some good gear, or you've got some legendary gear, you've got the orb, you've got the rune sword, you've got some interesting followers. When you get toadified and you drop all your gear, everyone, it's going to be a free-for-all. Everyone's going to be just going to try and scoop up that gear and steal it from you, and then maybe I'll try and step on you as a Toad. So you're going to lose all your stuff. Depending on how, where, and when you get toadified, you could be making your way in the dungeon. Dungeon is one of the side expansions, and we've pushed up the different side expansions to the channel here under the Talisman playlist. You can go in there into the dungeon where you're going to fight the Chaos Knight, and in doing that, dungeon, it's a mix. On average, in those adventure cards in the dungeon, without giving away any spoilers, the monsters are a little bit harder than average. And some of the monsters might have a condition like before combat do this or after combat do that. They're a little bit tougher. Well, that makes sense. I mean, it's a dungeon. We're going into the dungeon. But the rewards at the end, I'm not going to give them away. You got to discover them for yourself. The rewards at the end after you beat that Chaos Knight, the Dark Knight, it's worth it. And there's some interesting synergy and interesting shortcuts that you can take going for the Crown of Command. But what sometimes happens is you go into the dungeon and, you take a couple of hits, you lose a couple of life, but you're like, hey, I got like 2 life left. I could heal up, but I'm going to wait on that because I don't want to heal up to my full life yet. And then you get toadified and all your stuff drops. And now you got to move one space. And then you draw a card and you get killed and you're like, what the heck just happened? So going back to the tactica of embracing the random, influencing random, controlling the random, let's talk about a couple of different options when you could be toadified. Now, I can do my best to try to avoid being turned into a Toad by avoiding certain spaces. These could be spaces printed on the board, or they could be, I think it's like the witch card that populates. Again, trying to be really, really tight with the spoilers, where you can, I could try to avoid those as best I can. Might have to land on them, but I can avoid them. Okay, that's avoiding the random. Then there's times, though, with events. I could just be on a space, draw an adventure card, and it's like this and this happens, and roll to see if you get turned into a Toad. Well, in the Woodlands, I love the Woodlands on a side note. I love all the expansions. But the Woodlands, for me, the risk versus reward, the power of the Fae, there's a lot of toadification in the Woodlands. There's a lot of crazy stuff. For me, it's just way, way too random. It makes sense. Like, it's the Woodlands, and that fits that narrative. So there are parts of the board, the expansions in play, big box, small box, where you might draw that greater than average. So you could try to avoid that, but we have to be ready for that. How we're ready for that is, and this also is a way to counter the third part, where someone toadifies you. I want to do my best always to have a little bit of fate ready to go. Certain characters have multiple fate. Other characters might only have 1 or 2, or even 1 fate. So depending on how I spend that, I want to be able to have that fate. So if I get hit with a toad card, if I get turned into a toad, I get to at least get that reroll. Now, the third way you get hit with the toad, so that's what I can control. What I can't control is spells. There is a base spell called Random, which you cast on another person, and they could get some stuff, but they could also be turned into a toad. So depending on certain points, if you have this random spell, you hold it, and if a person's making a run for the Crown of Command, or they're in the dungeon, or they're low on life, they've got 1 life left, bam, you hit them with the random. Now they might have a counter spell. They might have an object that makes them immune to it, right? Certain objects. I can't always know or navigate that, but I do have to be aware that if someone is playing a mage-based character or somehow through the luck of the game, the troll has we had this in one game, troll had just through luck of the cards and the player went with it, had like 14 intelligence. Troll's the smartest character in the game, just blasting spells. He's got the spell book. He's got everything, just blasting spells. But I know as we go through the game, if a player is holding 2 or 3 magic cards and they haven't discarded them or they haven't burned them, sometimes you burn a magic card where you draw a card and you're like, I'm never going to use this. So I just cast it just to get it out of my hand so I can draw another. Or if I can't draw another one, when I receive my full complement of spells, I'm ready to go. I got to look and be like, wait, they might have a toad getting ready to hit me there. So maybe I got to be careful, save some fate, right? Have some way to block it, see what we can do. Likewise, it's a navigation of the best you can. I do try to keep my health half or above. I don't want it to get down to 1. I don't want it to get down to 2. If it gets down to 1 or 2 for another player, I might try to hit them with a toad card if I've got it. Need to be really, really careful. Of course, that's not always possible because you could have a string of a couple of bad hits, but those are the conditions to navigate with that toad. I would say also a lot depends on the audience that you're playing with. Talisman as a pickup game versus Talisman as kind of, I know what you're getting into. So 2 examples of that to framework this out. Before we turn it over to my fellow Talisman enthusiasts, where I would love to hear your most horrific toad experience. I play every other month. We play a big competitive Talisman game. We've been doing this for almost a decade at this point. And there's players with hours and hours more experience than myself. And we get together to play this game, and it is full. We all go into it knowing it is full cutthroat. It is full, we're going to run for the Crown of Command. And it's always with just the base ending Crown of Command ending. So you can have bragging rights for the next month or 2 if you win. You can make deals. You can attack other players. You do whatever you got to do to do this. So within that framework, when someone draws a card, you've got some gear, you've got some followers. You're like, strength, craft, 10, 11. I think I could do the Portal of Power. I'm getting ready to do that. And they draw some random card where it's like, you've encountered whatever the heck. Roll a D6. And a 1 means you get turned into a toad. When that happens before they roll it, all of us, and usually there's about 10 players, we're screaming at the person like, toad, 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 toad. We are screaming, roll that 1. That's okay. That's the audience. I hope that you have a toad card. This was, on another side note, playing with the Reaper expansion. I had a character that had some good fate, 4 or 5 fate, and I had the is it the lodestone, the fate stone, some stone that also gives you 2 fate. So I got mad fate, and my friend, I'm not going to name any names, love you, he had mad fate. So we'd been competing a little bit, and I activate the Reaper, and I send it to him. Well, look, you're hanging out within a D6 of the Reaper. There we go. So he dices it off, and he gets the value, send it to another player. So he sends the Reaper to me. Okay, look, I would do that too, right? I mean, tactically, maybe you send the Reaper to the strongest player because you want them to get killed, but okay, lose a life, whatever. I roll that, And I'm like, you know what? I'm going to burn some fate. Whatever I got. I'm like, I'm going to burn some fate. I want to see if I could get it to get the Reaper to go back to the other player. Now, this was maybe the middle of beginning of the game. So yeah, I had some okay stuff, but if I got killed, then it wouldn't be the worst thing. It would be okay. I wouldn't be happy, but I could still do it. But just we got this rivalry going on. So I send the Reaper to him. He's like, I'll burn fate, rolls it, sends the Reaper back to me. So now I'm like, other players are like, well, this is great because one of these guys is going to lose and they're burning fate like crazy. I burn fate, send it to him. He burns fate, send it to me. I finally burned fate and sent it to him and killed him. But I say that within the framework because sometimes you'll have that in a game where it's the nature in good spirit and fun of the players that you are playing with. Now, Talisman, especially the Toad, it puts you in that spot. There are times where I will have a Talisman open game. Bring it, set it up, all the expansions, all the sideboards, everything ready to go. We know the rules of the game, but I really kind of step back and play it more from a role-playing perspective of, I'll try to make that run for the Crown of Command, but I generally won't attack other players. I won't steal or destroy your gear. If you get toadified, look, if you're getting ready, if you're through the portal of power, I got to throw a Toad card on you if I have it. But I generally don't do that. I'm certainly not going to scream out Toad at the top of my lungs. I'm within that framework. I think it's important to understand, especially if you're introducing this game for the first time or second time, or it's an open pickup game, the Toad is a very, very interesting and unique Talisman reference. It really, really kind of is. So in exploring that, there is tactica. There is tactica behind the Toad.